Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me thank you for being here. The stories on this podcast are meant to let you know that you're not alone in what you're going through and that we can all find strength in struggle with the right perspective. If you've been enjoying the podcast, let me ask that you leave a review on your platform of choice to help us grow so that we can continue to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 194. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and also in the great city of Philadelphia, we have a very, very, very special guest, Kareem Rosser. Kareem, how are you?
I'm good, Joe. Thanks for having me. And, as I shared before, I'm just excited to chat with you. I know it's something that we've been trying to make happen for a while, so I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I'm looking forward to it as well. And just for a bit of context for people listening, we got connected somewhat indirectly through a previous podcast guest of mine, a client and a friend, Frank Alois. He's episode 174 of this podcast, and he is an amazing connector of people. And he has been, encouraging me to read about you, to get connected with you for a long time now. And after reading your book and after doing some other research about your life, I am so excited to dive in because I think what you're about is what I'm about. And that's
Yeah.
overcoming adversity, finding strength in struggle, encouraging and empowering other people. And
Yeah.
with that being said, before I do your introduction for you, I'd love for you to tell people listening who you are if they've never heard your name.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate it. Yeah, Frank is an incredible guy, and I've gotten to know Frank over the last year or so as my daughter is now a student at a SEH. So yeah, Frank's is awesome. But a little bit about me. I like to really just refer to myself as a young guy from West Philly. Born and raised. I wasn't born, spending my time on the playground, but really on back of a horse at a barn. So a little different from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But yeah, I really, when I describe myself, I'm just a kid from West Philly who grew up in a big family. I come from a family of six, a single mother who raised all of us pretty much by ourselves with the support of my grandparents and aunts and uncles. But I come from a very tough neighborhood in West Philly known as the Bottom. It's given its name for a reason. It's one of those places where it's really challenging for most people who grow up there. Resources are scarce, and most families, have come from households where parents, have middle school, high school educations, and everyone's just working to make ends meet. And I'm one of those kids from West Philly who was fortunate enough to find a way out, if you will, really. And and now, but I'm a very proud Philadelphian. I'm back here in Philly, living in the Mount Airy section of the city. And now, I my background a little bit. I graduated school from Colorado State University, moved back to Philly in 2016, started working in finance at a firm there, and then at the same time was still very involved in the charity that I grew up riding horses and work to ride, which I'm sure we'll touch on at some point in the conversation. But I think in a nutshell, that's who I am. I'm a guy from Philly who is incredibly ambitious and happy to be back here making a difference.
It's a great, great introduction. And I have so many questions I want to ask you, but I'll just lead with a very open ended question that I ask every guest,
Yeah.
which is when you look back at your life to this point, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest thing really is all the loss I've dealt with in my life at a very early age. My grandparents died when they were young. They were in their 50s, early 50s to mid 50s. I've had a lot of friends who you know, died because of gun violence and really died by the way of gun violence and friends who've taken their lives at an early age. I've dealt with loss in many different forms. And so I think really that's been one of the most difficult things. I lost my brother to gun violence in March of 2020. And so, he was just 35 at that time, 34. Yeah, 35 at the time. And yeah, so it was, yeah, I've dealt, I think the answer really is just all the loss I've dealt with at such a young age.
Yeah. So I'm sure we can get into details, but I think to better use our time, I'll ask another deep question and you can take it wherever you want. But
Yeah,
you talk about your brother David's story in the book, and it kind of runs through your life in a lot of different
yeah,
ways.
yeah.
And I'm curious, what does forgiveness look like for you, for him, for your past, or even just within yourself? What does forgiveness look like, and what role does that play in your story?
Yeah, I mean, I think, forgiveness, my wife is very religious. And she reminds me all the time about forgiveness, right? And sort of just having a kind heart and a soft heart, even when things get very difficult and when, sometimes it's hard to forgive someone who may have done something wrong to you or done something wrong to someone that you love. But that's really not, kind of leading your life or living your life, with the purpose of wanting to get back after someone or get revenge, I guess, if you will, if that's the word. Um, and to not really lead with that sort of mentality. And so when I think of forgiveness, I think about really, quite literally forgiving someone who may, the person who took my brother's life, right? I know my brother wasn't necessarily, saint himself, but I try to have to really, put that into perspective and understand the situation and the circumstances that were just around the situation itself. And it is very challenging, but I realize that if you really don't have the ability to forgive, it makes kind of waking up really hard, right? It makes it very challenging trying to just get on with your day and get on with some of the things that you hope to achieve in life. If I focused on getting revenge or being upset with people every day, I probably would have not made any of the progress that I've made in my life. So I think forgiveness is really important if you really want to just move forward, right? Move forward with your life, and not necessarily mean you forget the things that have happened. I think those things, ultimately shape you and inform your decisions, and hopefully in a good way. But I know forgiveness is definitely it's a huge thing. And again, my wife, who is very religious, reminds me of that. And when she's leaning on her faith and thinking about those things and passing those, that word on to me, it's very, very helpful.
Yeah. There's a great quote, and I'm blanking on who it's from, but it's that forgiveness is to set a prisoner free and to realize the prisoner is you.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's tough, man. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like to lose a loved one in the way that you lost your brother. And like you alluded to, there's so much loss in your story overall, and yet you've seemed to rise above all of it. And it
yeah,
has a lot to do with a sport that I don't even think you've mentioned by name. And to
yeah.
it's before I let you talk about it, I've never met anyone who plays the sport that is so important in your life. So tell me, when's the first time you got on a horse ever? And when's the first time you realized that polo is something that you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, so just a little bit of backstory. My late brother David and my brother Jabbar discovered the Shimoni Stables, which is located in West Vermont Park, and they were just out on a bike ride in the afternoon and just kind of took a wrong turn that led them to the stables, and they ultimately met Leslie Heiner, who's the executive director and founder of Work to Ride. And Leslie handed them an application, and it was kind of really history after that. And as a little boy, I always wanted to be around my brothers and do whatever my brothers were doing. And had to convince and force my mom to, have my brothers take me with them to the stables,
Yeah.
which took, some time. And so I was 8 at that time when that happened. And so I was introduced to the stables and the work to ride program. And my brothers, put me on a horse for the first time. And I immediately fell in love with it. The first pony that I rode, her name was Angel, got on her back, and Angel took me around the ring, and and I was like, I was immediately in my happy place. And then the first time I picked up a polo mallet, I was probably about 9 or 10 or so after I kind of, um, gain the basic skills that one really needs to hold a polo mallet and ride a horse at the same time, because that in itself can be tricky. And so I picked up a polo mallet, started hitting the ball, and just like most polo players, it's a true addiction, especially when you start connecting with the horse and you're actually able to hit the ball and then you're able to do it at speed. It's just this insane adrenaline rush that you get that I think I guess when you play some sport, I think a lot of people become obsessed with sports, but this is one thing that is, it's very difficult to um, to really just like not want to do. And so yeah, so 8, I started riding, 9, 10, picked up a polo mallet, got introduced to the game, and then it completely just changed our lives.
Mm. So before I ask the next question I was planning on asking, is it ironic at all in your mind that the first horse or pony that you rode, that their name was Angel, and that this sport seems to have been, in a way, an angel in your life?
Yeah, no, I mean, I never thought about it, but yeah, it's crazy. I think the other thing that I want to point out, um, I guess if you think about the sort of irony and all those sort of things, is that we come from this incredibly dangerous world in Philadelphia, growing up in poverty, and dealing with all the violence and trauma, and then we gravitate towards this crazy dangerous sport in polo. Some people say arguably it's like the second most dangerous sport to NASCAR when you think about, because polo is a contact sport. We'll get into a bit about the game itself actually, but a lot of fatal accidents occur, and it's very, very dangerous. So you would think that we would want to go towards something that was a little bit safer and not as risky, but that's like it's just something that kind of pulled us in. So from the whole thinking about, angel thing, thinking about coming from a very dangerous place to playing a very dangerous sport, I think it's all very unique and interesting, but it's a perfect combination that has given us purpose and completely changed our lives.
Man, that's so great. And like I from the outside feel like there has to be a sense of peace that comes from being around an animal like a horse, right?
Hmm.
And maybe not in the game, in the chaos and the intensity of the game itself, but just by being around those animals, there has to be a sense of stillness and peace and calmness. What have horses taught you about life, about yourself that maybe you couldn't have learned in any other way?
Yeah, so one of the things about Work to Ride is the name of the organization, and just a little bit
Mm.
background on Work to Ride. We're a Philadelphia-based nonprofit that's been around for the last 30 years. I was founded in '94 by Leslie, and her vision was to use horses as a vehicle to essentially transform lives, give kids purpose, teaching them soft skills, hard skills, just teaching an individual how to become a responsible person and adult. But through that, there's this therapeutic aspect to it as well that at that, when I was 8 or at that time, I didn't realize what was happening or how this was actually shaping me as a person, but also healing me as I was just still dealing with the, the day-to-day drama and the all the traumatic experiences that I was going through at that time. I would go to the barn and I would immediately forget about what was happening at home. I was finally at peace. I was happy. I was able to be a kid. I was able to let my innocence show and to just focus on really just being a kid. Right? You're not worrying about the responsibilities that come with living in a place like the bottom. And you know the horses themselves are just these gentle giants that provides all this nurturing that you don't realize you need or that you were missing until you're around them. And one of the amazing things about being around horses is that they're just, 1,200 pound like creatures that just demands your attention, regardless of what's going on. Like you walk into a barn or into a stable and you go and you like approach a horse, you're immediately just going to pay attention because it's just the size of it. You want to also make sure you don't get hurt or you're not, that you're just aware of your surroundings and so like that piece alone is just amazing. And then you start to interact with the horse, and you have this massive creature that at any given second it has a mind of its own, can just kill you, do whatever it wants, but it's obeying your commands. It's, listening to your cues. It's understanding your feelings, and, even when you're having a bad day, a horse can sense that. And then this horse providing this sort of recreational experience for you, right? That you're, sort of releasing dopamines when you're riding because you're so excited, you're exercising. And then the horses themselves need it too. So like horses, like I said, just mentioned, have their minds of their own. And so one of the unique and special things about Work Triad is that we have a bunch of horses that are donated to us that often comes with issues, like both physical and mental issues. And same with a lot of the kids. And we kind of married the kids and the horses together, and it's just sort of this perfect match. So that's my long-winded way of saying horses are incredible creatures that provides the therapy that many people don't realize that they need.
I think there's something so beautiful about the idea that you could be around something that is nurturing you and healing you and helping you, and you might not even realize it until after the fact or much later. I think
Hmm.
that that's beautiful. And you mentioned the word purpose a couple of times, and in your memoir, you talk about the difference between survival versus purpose as motivations. I
Hmm.
guess what comes to mind for me is, when did you realize you weren't just trying to escape the environment that you grew up in, but you were instead trying to change it?
Yeah, I mean, that was later in life as I got older, my later teens. I talk about going to military school. I went to Valley Forge Military Academy, which is unfortunately closing. And that those years were very informative years and really shaped me into, I think, kind of the man that I am today. Just all the kind of the day-to-day stuff, but all the skills that I was acquiring as a cadet there. Um, but as I got older, I started to realize like a thing for me, like I didn't realize how important education was until I showed up to Valley Forge. I started seeing kids excelling in school. Kids were taking school seriously. Kids were, striving to get into an Ivy League. Never heard of an Ivy League, or I was aware of the Ivy Leagues. We were going to ride horses and play polo there, but I didn't actually know what it meant to go to an Ivy League school, right? And so, someone says Cornell or Yale. I was playing polo there at like 12 and 13 years old, but it was like I didn't know what it meant to actually to go to Yale or Cornell. And so, when I was in school around, when I was surrounded by people who sort of had purpose, but also had ambition
Mm.
and it was had aspirations and those sort of things. I started to recognize that okay, life is not just about surviving, right? It's not about just getting through the next day. It's now you're building on each day, right? Each day comes with its own challenges. Adversity is going to come and go. Um, and so as I got older and I started to see other people around me who were ambitious and who wanted to go and be a doctor or be something. You hear kids talk about, oh, what do you want to be? You want to grow? Oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a lawyer. No one knows what any of those things really mean, right? But then when you start seeing people lay the foundations for those things, like showing up to school, getting good grades, busting your butt to score well on your SATs, all these things that are sort of stepping stones to get to this next level, rather than just saying that I want to be this. So I would say really kind of my later teen years, as I was surrounded around, by people who not only like again aspired to be or to do some of those things, but were actually taking meaningful steps to do it, and then watching people achieve it really motivated me.
Hmm. I guess I could have asked this earlier, but if you never found horses, if your brothers never found the stable, if you never found polo, where do you think you would be?
Yeah, that I get that question often, and I think as a timid boy who, was, literally afraid of where I grew up and just was always afraid of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And um, in my I was always curious about things and I wanted to do things differently than many of the kids I grew up with. That I like to think that I would still be doing something good, or I would still, I would be in some seat doing something that's productive and making a difference. Because I think that's just who I am naturally. So, but I don't know. That's always a very difficult question because there's so many experiences and things that I went through that sort of kind of led me to where I am today and to the decisions that I've made. Because I was fortunate enough to be exposed to so many great things, as at the same time, bad things, but I had enough like good data to go from or to use to like make better decisions,
Mm.
right? Versus just, you know, constantly being fed horrible information or being exposed to just poverty all day, then that makes it a little bit challenging. I mean, and people still find their way out, but I like to think that I would have been an individual without, even if I didn't have horses, I would have been able to figure out how to improve my life.
One of the reasons I love this podcast and one of the reasons I think social media, when used with intention, can be an amazing thing is because people like you can share your story, how you've overcome the lessons you've learned, and it could reach someone who is not in a geographic area anywhere close to
Yeah,
Philadelphia. All
yeah,
someone needs is an internet connection. And now all of a sudden they have exposure to what's possible, what it looks like to lay a foundation, the stepping stones, etc. And so
yeah,
it's so beautiful. And I have again so many questions for you. And part of what makes a conversation like this hard for me is because you've put a lot of your life out there, and I want to hear more about all of it.
yeah, yeah,
But I'm going to come back to where this podcast started, and I'm going to ask you another big open-ended question. You could take it wherever you want. When you look at your life to this point, what's the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose, and why did you do that thing?
I think the hardest thing I've ever done on purpose was leaving my family. Going to boarding school, going away to college, uh, taking summer jobs in places like Wyoming, New York, Connecticut. Uh, um, just like there was a period of time in my life from 14 really up until I was 22 or 3 that I left home and I lived out of a suitcase essentially because I would go to school. I wasn't in school. I would find a summer gig. I was riding horses or playing polo somewhere that was not in Philadelphia. So I spent a period of my life really not being with my family. And, I there's probably early on I was maybe homesick a few times, but I got to a point to where I was never homesick anymore because I knew like, I had to leave to actually improve my life and give myself a real chance. And kind of thinking back on it now because of the close relationships I have with all my siblings, my mom. I'm like, how the heck did I even do that? And realizing how close, how important my family how close I am to my family, how important they are to me today. Uh, but that was difficult. I was a young boy. I was 13, 14, left my mom's house. I was going to boarding school that there were the challenges at boarding school that I'm sure you read about. Then I would go to these places and spaces where I was the only person of color. No one really knew what it meant to grow up in a place like the bottom. So you're trying to figure out how to fit in. You didn't necessarily really fit in those places, and you definitely don't really fit in at home because you're evolving and changing your ways and just doing things differently than what normally happens in the neighborhood. And so I think just that stretch, that period of my life was probably there were so many different challenges, right? And a lot that I've learned from a lot that has shaped me and shaped me to be the man that I am today. And a lot of positive, more good experiences than bad for sure. And but I think that, like, if I had to say, like, one of the hardest things I had to do was to really leave my family at a very early age, in 13, 14 years old, and then not return until I was 23, 24, and being home full time. So I would say that that was probably one of the most challenging parts of my life.
Hmm. If you could go back in time and talk to 14-year-old Kareem and explain to him that even though this is hard, this is the best thing for you and potentially for your family, how would you explain that? How would you encourage him? Like, I know this is hard. I know this is not going to feel good, but you're doing the right thing. You have to leave right
Yeah.
now.
I would go back and say it's temporary, right? It's like this temporary period that is that you have to go through. It's going to, set you up for a better, more productive, I think, happier life. Um, and and if you want to break this vicious cycle that often captures and keeps people um, uh, uh, restricted or stuck where they are, where you come from, you have to do it. It's not. It's also it's also greater than you're just yourself, right? It's one of these things that you're gonna. There's gonna be a moment where you're gonna have to learn to be selfless and learn how to sort of go through the adversity. But the important thing is that this won't last. It's a very short period, and you're really just laying the foundation so that when the tougher and there's going to be more challenges and tougher challenges, but you now have a foundation that's is so stable that whatever problem and things that comes your way for the next whatever 60 years or whatever it is you live, you'll be able to manage to handle it. So sacrifice 10 years of being uncomfortable. But you being uncomfortable is just going to prepare you to really be able to navigate just a difficult world. And so I think that's really what I would tell myself. I would tell myself that 10 years is going to fly by and you're going to be set up. And it flew by, and now I'm in a much better position than many of the people that I grew up with. It's just, I think, simply because I made that sacrifice.
I hope there are people listening to this podcast who really listened to what you just said. And if not, if it flew by or your mind got distracted as you listened, rewind 2, 3 minutes and listen to that again because that is it's so good. The motto of Project Endure and something I have tattooed on my body is do hard things. And I
Yeah,
think what we want is on the other side of hard. And hard can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I think that the temporary sacrifice for a greater good and a greater gain long term
yeah,
is really important. And with that being said, one of the hard things that you've done is kind of break into this somewhat exclusive sport, right? It's not a sport that a lot of people hear of, watch, play. And you don't look like a lot of the people that play the sport of polo. I am curious what it's been like for you to crack into that world, make a name for for yourself, make space for you and others like you, what that journey's been like. Yeah, I'd love to hear.
yeah. No, I mean, it's been this wow, amazing journey. Honestly, it's like you said, polo is this unique sport, and not many people play, not many people watch. There's a decent amount of people who know about it, and those who kind of know something about it. There's this stereotype of this elite sport that you have to be rich and white to be able to play and to be able to access. Um, I mean, there's no way around it. There's certainly a lot of barriers to entry. Horses are just expensive. The sport, there's this like keep a horse alive is an expensive thing. So, that just immediately just eliminates pretty much almost everybody, right? Just kind of keeping horses alive and doing it at a level where you're enjoying it and everything is running smoothly. Um, but fortunately through work to ride, he was able to access a sport, specifically through uh, the United States Polo Association, which is the governing body of polo in the U.S., have a program. It's called II, stands for Interscholastic Intercollegiate Polo. So you have high school teams that are affiliated with either local clubs or collegiate clubs, and you have college teams that are around the country as well. So I started playing high school polo, and then you have two types of polo. You have arena polo and grass polo. I play both, but play a lot of arena polo because that's the more sort of easier and easier to access, just in terms of just the amount of resources that are required. And so, me and my siblings all played at one point, played with a lot of the other kids who were involved in the Work to Ride program. And for many years, we just had donated hand-me-down equipment, not the best boots, not the best looking equipment. It's whatever people gave us. And we threw it on and we got on a horse and went out to go ride. And it took us years to really learn how to ride properly and learn how to really play the game in a way where we not only were successful, but also just becoming good horsemen and horsewomen. And so I spent a lot of time losing games, a lot of time just very frustrated because many of the kids and groups who we're playing against had the resources to practice, and the horses that were needed to do, to practice year round in the facilities that were also required. And so we were just, so we spent a lot of time just watching videotapes, trying to mimic what was seen on these tapes just to get better. We took advantage of every opportunity that was given to us to ride and to play, at a proper facility. And so again, we started to learn the game, and kind of fast forward several years. In 2011, became the first, I was a part of the first all African American team to win a national high school championship in 2011. And that was just an incredible feeling. But what it took for us to get from that, from just simply getting on a horse to learn the game to riding a national champ to winning a national championship, there's a lot of tears, a lot of frustrations, a lot of long road trips, and it was just an incredibly rewarding thing. And then, fortunately, I was able to go on to college to play at Colorado State University, where I won a national championship and won Player of the Year both in high school and in college. And I've been all over the world playing polo. Been to Europe, been to Africa, been to Asia, played polo all over the U.S. And recently just won the FIP Arena World Championships, which is kind of the Olympics of polo. We just did that in back in October. I was selected to play on Team USA, and won it for the first time, or the second time USA has won any FIP World Championships ever. I think the first was in 1989, and then this was the second. And so that was a cool experience. But yeah, I mean, the journey, it was a long one. And I know we don't have like a super, don't have that much time. And you know, happy to share more details about it. But really, it was just this incredible journey that I was fortunate enough to experience with some of my siblings and some kids who I've met through the organization have essentially become my siblings. And it's just been this wild journey in this sport that that has changed my life, and now I'm using to continue to change other lives.
So I've got a couple questions. I think one, I'll go in order of most basic to most complex. The most basic question is when you go to Europe or Africa or somewhere like that, how does your horse get there? A boat?
So we actually, when I travel to many of these places, the horses are provided. So there are, but players who play polo year round, professionally, full time, they have horses on almost every continent, and they get there by plane. So there are horses that are being flown around the world nonstop to compete. But fortunately for me, if I'm invited to go play at a tournament or at some place, the horses are usually provided.
So, okay, I've never ridden a horse, and actually
Yeah,
talking to you makes me want to ride a horse. So that's I'll say that out loud. I want to
yeah,
ride a horse. But I would imagine it's not like driving a car, right? Every horse is a little bit different.
yes, yes.
How does that work to play at the highest level to get on a horse that potentially you've never ridden before?
That's great. That's a great question. So one of the unique and cool things about high school and college polo is that when you're playing as a visiting team, you're almost 99% of the time you are riding the host site horses. And polo ponies are trained the same. like to, but you made a good point that they're all different, not everyone's the same. And so it does require an individual to be a good horseman or a good horsewoman to be able to deal with the challenges any horse may present, but also be able to, you know, fix things or adjust things on the fly. So that's one of the cool things about high school and college polo is that you're constantly riding different horses. So I don't know, I've been over thousands of horses in my lifetime, and each one is different, right? And so there's some you like absolutely love, some that you just never want to see again. And but so my years of experience of just riding really set me up to go and ride a horse at any place at any time. And so that just takes a lot of training and a lot of practice to get to that point. But you generally will, in most cases, find your as they call it, string of horses that well, they're yours. They're good days or bad days. You know how to get every little thing out of them. And that's an ideal. But I've and pretty much my entire life, I've always have gone and ridden horses that I was unfamiliar with.
Do you think interacting with so many different horses has allowed you to better interact with humans as well? Is there any carryover there?
That's a great question. I think I actually never thought about that because I feel like I've met a lot of interesting people who are around horses, and there are some people I probably still wouldn't put around other humans, and they seem to be fine around horses. So I don't know if that's actually true or not, or because yeah, I've seen some people who are, yeah, they're perfectly fine, but then you take them out into another setting, then it's like, yeah, you probably should have stayed at the bar. But I don't, I mean, yeah, but all jokes aside, I would say yes, because there's this piece, it's like the confidence that one gets from being around a horse is huge. I showed up, I was afraid of everything, didn't want to touch a horse, didn't want to do this. And, and like eventually start building this confidence to ride. Eventually at one point I didn't want to ride. I only wanted to ride the pony. I didn't want to ride a bigger horse. And then eventually I got the confidence to get on a bigger horse. And then I only wanted to walk and trot. And then eventually I got the confidence to canter. And then I was excited to go run and go faster. And so I think that confidence piece can certainly carry over to like you dealing with humans. Because I think when you build confidence in anything, you can um, carry that over into whatever it is that you may be doing. So I think you become a confident athlete. Maybe it allows you to go out and become a better public speaker because you've gained some confidence there. So I would say there's definitely, I think it certainly helps, but I never really thought about it.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And it's a perfect segue into the next question that I have for you, which is around the concept of being in a place where people might not expect you to be. And I think that there are a lot of people listening to this podcast who, in one area of their life or another, feel like an imposter, like
Hmm.
they don't belong or they shouldn't be there. What has your journey taught you about how to carry yourself in those places where maybe you feel like an imposter or you're not expected to be?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I can't tell you how often I've dealt with feeling that way, and it's just one of those things that you know, if I'm being honest, I still struggle with it, and it is one of those things that it's so for me, I walk into a room and and I know I'm much more confident than I ever was, even as a little boy, even as a teenager, even in my 20s, now being in my 30s. Um, but it's still sometimes it's just so hard when you're like, do I really belong here, or is this my space? And it's challenging being a person who's kind of one of the first to really do it, right? And I mean, there's some other older African American polo players. Um, uh, I know one in particular who's been around the space. So I wouldn't really want to say not the first African American to be doing it, but you know, one of the few that's still kind of breaking the barrier down and making it more accessible. And I think that just presents its own challenges, right? Because it's not like there's been several black doctors now and several there's many black golfers now. I mean, several after Tiger Woods, and again, I'm not taking away that it doesn't that they necessarily don't still feel that imposter syndrome. Um, but I know for a fact that there still aren't that many black polo players that are going through a horseman. And like set aside the polo piece, even again, I've been working in business and finance and walking into a boardroom and sitting down trying to pitch someone an idea and then realizing like I do know what I'm talking about. I'm actually good at this. It just takes, I think it's just repetition and time and I think I mean, obviously, when you're successful at things and you have positive results, you should certainly use that as motivation or affirmation or letting you know, like, okay, you do belong here. You're good, right? You are, like for me recently, uh, I was a part of building this new. We just built this 15 or $16 million facility, indoor riding facility at our site in at our barn in here in West Fremont Park, and I led many of those efforts. But going through that process, it was kind of like, you know, do I know what I'm talking about? Can I actually build a building? Can I do these things? Can I do these things? And while I'm questioning it at the same time, I'm pushing myself, right? I'm telling myself, I'm reminding myself, you belong, you can do it. And each day, each little win was helping me kind of kind of start blacking out this whole imposter thing because I start to see the results. I'm seeing this physical thing actually be built, and that was really helpful. And this is my long way because I'm trying because like I said, I'm trying to articulate this because this is not something that has like gone away, right? It's not, it's still present for me. And I'm reminding myself as I'm sharing this with you and I'm sharing it with the audience that it's just one of those things I think you work through. I think and again, you have to really um, uh, accept and be proud of the progress. Because I think and then also take a moment to reflect on what it is that you just did and or situation that you may have been in that may have, brought that feeling to surface and made you question whatever it is that you're doing. Use those wins to say I am that guy, I am that girl, like I did this, and there was no there was no me being a posh and then being an imposter. Like I showed up and I delivered, I executed. And so and that's what I remind myself each day, because again, like I said, if I'm being honest with you as in this audience, like it is something I address. I still address it. And so, I mean, that's my answer as I'm still kind of working through it. And but it is so hard. It is so hard.
That's a great answer, and I appreciate you being honest. I feel the same way, and I think that when it comes to the idea of being an imposter, there's almost two sides to it in my mind. One side is I don't belong here, and that's a good thing to recognize. Like I don't belong around this group of people. I don't belong
Yeah.
in this setting. I don't. So if that's the case, and you're listening to your gut, then listen to your gut and get out. But I think a lot of the times it's I feel like an imposter because this is scary, or I feel like an imposter because this is hard. And I
Hmm.
actually think that's a good thing to feel because it means you're outside of your comfort zone. It means you're stretching yourself. It means that you're in a place where growth is happening and growth is possible. And I think recognizing that feeling like an imposter a lot of times is a good thing. It means you're in a place where you can grow. I
Hmm.
think that helps me. And it sounds like you agree, but I would encourage people in the audience to ask themselves that question. Do I feel this way because it's uncomfortable? Do I feel this way because I can grow here? And I think if
Yeah.
the answer is yes, then you should keep feeling like an imposter. You should try to find places where you feel like maybe you don't belong yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you articulated it very well, and it's often for me, it's like things are hard and uncomfortable, and that's it. It's not like or these are horrible people, and I don't need to be around them, or they're just not my type of people. It's like they're challenging me in a whole new way, or people are telling me no, or that's like a bad idea, or I would rethink this or do these things. Again, all information that is can be useful to achieving something, right? And or you're walking in and you hear someone pitch something, they do it so well and everyone's excited about it and it's your turn. You're like, well, I need to do that. Like also be yourself, be authentic, be true to who you are, be and also like understand no's or bad pitches or just a bad day is just part of the process, right? And so I know it can fuel that like that imposter syndrome when you walk out of a room, oh crap, like I did a horrible job. See, I should have never been here. I should have never walked into this space. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. Um, but it's again, I now lean on my track record. Once you get to a point to be able to build a track record, to be able to then say, I'm that guy. I can do it.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, I know that our time is coming to a close. And so I'm going to throw the last big question out at you. But
Yeah.
before I throw that question out, I want to say there's so much that we just don't have a chance to talk about here,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for people listening who want to learn more, because I think there is a lot of value in the stories that you have to tell, your book, Crossing the Line, is available for purchase. I would imagine anywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it's anywhere. I mean, now I'm going to Amazon. I think if everyone like purchase their books, and I'm sure if you go to Barnes and Nobles or something, like if it's not on the shelf, like you can go order it at any major bookstore or even the little smaller shops. You can, yeah. I know some people prefer to go purchase books through their kind of local bookstores and support them, so you can pretty much get it anywhere.
So I would encourage anyone who's interested, even a little bit, to go check it out. And with that being said, the last question of the podcast is a meaningful one to me because I think in all of our lives, we go through seasons where we need encouragement, we need guidance. And there are people listening to this all over the world who are going through tough times, hard seasons, they're in dark places, and they just feel maybe a bit lost or a bit stuck, and they just don't know what to do or where to go. If you could speak directly to that person on the other end who's in that chapter of their life, what would you say to them?
Look, I mean, I think I'll go back and touch on some of the things we even talked about, really, just skin adversity, hard times. A lot of these things are temporary, right? You know, the one thing that I've learned, and I don't know where I was just writing this response. There was another interview. It's actually some I had to write this out, and it was kind of talking about handling adversity, being lost, and those kind of things. And again, I talk about it being temporary. Um, but also at the same time, like I generally try to find a lot of good and bad situations or bad or tough times. And I think if one had the ability to take a tough time or a horrible accident or some traumatic experience and find a good in it, that is a huge step to moving forward. You know, use my brother's death as an example. My brother died, my brother was killed, that happened. And, there was a moment or there was a time where I was like, this can be way worse than it really is. Specifically, our family can divide, separate, and all, just, go our separate ways and not be there for each other and just, suffer in pain alone. Or we could come together and build this incredible relationship. There's thing I just like still from there was a slogan from the Warriors, a basketball team, sort of strength in numbers they used for a while as their slogan. And like immediately I was saying, okay, like we need to come together to, if we're gonna get through this, we have the numbers to do it. We're gonna get through this tough time and not only just get through this tough time, but we're gonna better our lives. Right. And so my family, we came together and we've always been close, but my brother's death, like we're like inseparable. I mean, we speak on the phone every day. We talk about our challenges. We are very vulnerable. We're supporting each other in every possible way, and we're constantly elevating each other. We're constantly getting each other to this next step. And my point here is that the good I found in my brother's death was how close it brought my family together, right? And then it allowed us to build this bond that kind of sort of makes us unstoppable, I think. And so every little challenge now we just deal with it together. We can figure it out. We can lean on each other. But my the what I'm trying to the point I'm getting to people here is that like don't let adversity stop you through your journey. Everyone's journey is going to have some adversity. Like that is life. Like if anyone manages to get through life, and when I mean like a long life without adversity, I will hope that can be studied. I have no idea. I've never heard of that, but it certainly should be studied. But it's just a moment to grow, and it's temporary, right? And being stuck is temporary. It's only permanent if you choose to make it permanent. When I mean that means you don't get up out of bed, you are like you're intentionally not trying to actually improve it. And I know that's easier said than done. I know people are suffering with mental health issues and all. Like I'm not ignoring any of the other factors that make it a challenge, but I believe, a healthy mind, even a mind again that's being challenged mentally or whatever the things they're going through, you can find a way. Like if you can like just have the will to just deal with the pain, but knowing that the pain is temporary, just know that it is not a long-term thing. And honestly, I think my message is there's a lot of good in every crappy situation. You just gotta find it. And it's not, I don't think it's like a needle in a haystack. You gotta try to find this little piece of good. It's there. And so it's again, I think it's just really believe in it. I think you gotta believe it is the first step. And then remember that it's just a temporary thing. So that's my message.
I think what you said is a perfect embodiment of what it takes to have endurance through life, to recognize that the good and the bad, the hard and the beautiful are all intermingled. And I'm just going to read one quick excerpt from your book before we wrap
Yeah.
up. It's really powerful. And you said, maybe he didn't realize it then, but David, your brother, saved my life. He brought me to the horses. He showed me a world I never knew existed. He was the first person to lift me onto a pony, the first person to lead me around the ring. He opened the door that changed everything for me. He handed me the map that led me out of the same streets that would take his life so many years later. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah. It is. And I meant it. It's crazy again. It's like those things that and that's another example of finding good in a crappy situation, right? That is a good example of okay, my brother's gone now. I can go try to get revenge or be really upset or actually realize how my brother actually saved my life, right? So I searched for the good and I found it and I used that to move forward.
So, on that note, Kareem, I mean, it has been an absolute pleasure to get to know you better through this conversation, to
Yes.
connect with you. And if people listening, in addition to the book, want to follow along with your journey, where could they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on social media. My Instagram's Kareem Rosser. I have a website, kareemrosser.com. Yeah, please welcome people to come stop by our place in West Vermont Park, the Shimoni Stables. And then also, we'd love for people to check out my second book, When You're Ready. So I wrote a second book that came out this past year, and so encourage people to pick that one up and continue to read on. And but yeah, I'm I'm here in Philly, and I'm sure those who are in Philly will be able to find me in somewhere walking around in the street, and don't be afraid to say hello.
Sounds good. Well, you'll have to teach me how to ride a horse sometime. And until then, keep up the great work, Kareem. And thank you so much for
No,
this.
thank you, Joe. We're gonna make it happen. We'll get you out to the stables.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.